In today's video, we are reacting to dumb habits that are actually signs that you, yes, you are smart. You know, yeah, I don't really have much to say on this. So with that being said, let's go to get to this video.
Common habits that are signs of high intelligence. Late night insight. It's 10 p.m. on a school night. You've done all your homework, maybe you've done all your work. You've played video games with your friends, you've done everything you could possibly do in the day, and for some reason, you still don't feel like going to bed. It's completely reasonable to be going to bed at this time, and honestly, it would save you a lot of headache in the morning. Although, for some reason, you decide to opt out of sleeping and stay up a few more hours just to enjoy a little bit of late night solitude. On a surface level, this may seem like an irresponsible decision, primarily being motivated by a lack of discipline or potentially a lack of respect for sleep. However, in some cases, that's truly not the case. And what this odd late night choice actually represents is something you might not expect. Now, I would say that most people watching this video would probably associate waking up early and starting your day with a strong routine, or at least at an early hour, would represent high intelligence because you are taking initiative in starting your day early, signaling proactivity and, of course, intention. Although, according to recent studies, that's actually not the case, and at least when it comes to brain function, opting to stay up late has been strongly correlated with higher intelligence. And I'm not just making this.
So you mean to tell me staying late up night till 6 in the morning is actually a good thing? So you're basically saying I'm smarter than everybody watching the video. I appreciate that, man.
Up to make myself feel better, because it might not be a surprise that being a YouTuber, my sleep schedule is not necessarily ideal. According to numerous scientific studies that have been conducted, people that are more likely to stay up late rather than wake up early show more of a specific type of intelligence that has been linked to prestigious jobs and higher incomes. Which is definitely an interesting metric, although money doesn't necessarily equate to intelligence per se. But of course, that isn't the only study. I just thought it was interesting. The University of Madrid, for example, did an in-house study on nearly 1,000 teenagers. And the sole goal of the study was to determine the sleep patterns of these students and then correlate that sleep pattern with their test results. Out of those nearly 1,000 students, 25% of them classified themselves as a morning person, and 32% of them classified themselves as a night owl. Oh, and the other roughly 50% didn't feel like they qualified in either of the groups, so they were just kind of neutral sleepers. Regardless, once they had the sleep patterns of every one of these participants, they then went on to track their academic output. And how this was tracked was the university would monitor the final grades for each of these students in major subjects. Math, science, writing, stuff like that. Unsurprisingly, the results of this study showed that participants that stayed up later or were night owls scored higher than morning types across the board, specifically on inductive reasoning.
Crazy, and you wouldn't I wouldn't have thought that. I would have thought the morning niggas would have worked better. Because if I'm tired, if I stayed up all night and I'm tired, when I go to this class, I would assume that would. Yeah, that one's surprising.
Now, inductive reasoning is an interesting metric to note because it has been shown to be one of the best estimates of general intelligence, and it is also one of the strongest predictors of academic performance. That, to me, is super interesting, and honestly makes a lot of sense, because I feel like if you try to compare it apples to apples and just say, oh, well, people that stay up late are better at math than people that wake up early, it doesn't really paint the full picture. Being gifted in math really only demonstrates one sort of intelligence, while inductive reasoning kind of covers general intelligence, which could apply to any subject. So for that reason, I think inductive reasoning is a smart variable, although it's also something I've never heard before, so I guess we're all learning today. But of course, these weren't the only studies to suggest that people that stayed up late were potentially more intelligent, or at least had better inductive thinking skills. The US Air Force, for example, did a study on their recruits, and what they found was that their night owl recruits were significantly more able to think laterally than their early bird recruits, even in morning meetings, which kind of just adds insult to injury because morning time is literally the natural habitat of early risers. Interestingly, throughout all of the studies that have been taken place on people that wake up early versus staying up late, there has been one commonality that has been associated with both sleepers, that being personality types. It has been suggested by Professor Jim Horn of Loughborough University that people that stay up late are more likely to be extroverted creative types, typically artists or inventors. And morning people, for example, are more likely to be logical and are often seen in logical jobs like accounting. Now, while all of this information is interesting and at least personally affirming, it's also not an end-all be-all. There is no right sleep routine besides the one that feels most natural to you and fits your lifestyle most. And just because you wake up early, it doesn't mean you're any less smart than somebody who stays up late. Specifically because you could be night owl brained, but your job simply doesn't allow for that. Although, if you do find yourself typically tending to stay up late at night, that just might be a sign that you have high intelligence. Or insomnia, and in that case, I would see a doctor. Okay, this might sound a bit weird, but I only ask because I care. When was the last time you've seen a doctor? If your answer to that question was, I have no idea, then it's probably time to get a checkup. And luckily, today's video sponsor, ZocDoc, is here to help. ZocDoc for sponsoring this video and supporting the channel. And now, let's get back to it. Teddy bear intellect. Have you ever given your car a nickname, felt bad for knocking over a stuffed animal, or maybe just had a strong emotional attachment to any inanimate object? Well,
Like when I have my Scat Pack. Yeah. Yeah, that's probably it though.
you might be smarter than you think, at least in a certain capacity. I would argue that there's likely two groups of people watching this video right now. One group of people that have at least a few core items from their childhood that they refuse to ever give up. A blanket, a stuffed animal, or something of the sort. While the other group had absolutely no issue destroying every shred of their childhood as soon as they hit puberty. Neither of these approaches to life are necessarily wrong, although they do signal different things. In the first example I gave, having a strong emotional connection to items you grew up with, this connection to inanimate objects has actually been associated with elevated emotional intelligence. And in some cases, this emotional connection with this object is considered to be anthropomorphism, which is essentially when you project either human emotions or attributes onto an object or animal. And there is a lot of famous examples of anthropomorphism in pop culture. For example, the movie Cars, or Lion King, or literally any movie where there is a character that is non-human but has human traits. This anthropomorphic trend in media is not necessarily by mistake either, and that's because anthropomorphism is typically associated with people that have high levels of empathy and also high levels of creativity, making it no surprise that the people that are giving you a movie about, well, talking cars are also some of the most talented animators and storytellers working in creative professions. Now, in my opinion, this sort of elevated emotional empathy and intelligence, while awesome, does come with its own downsides. Specifically, making a lot of things in life harder. When you find yourself gaining some sort of attachment to almost every object in your life, it makes moving on or downsizing a lot more complicated. And as we've seen, extreme versions of this mindset actually lead to some pretty horrendous situations. You know, the type of stuff you see on TLC. For example, the show Hoarders is all about people who are so attached to objects, and in a lot of cases, hoarding becomes dangerous, if not downright deadly. And it's believed in those extreme cases such as hoarding that these people are suffering from long-term mental trauma, and they're trying to use objects to fill a void that they have emotionally in their heart, which is very unfortunate. Another different extreme that I would have to assume operates on the same mental function would be that one guy that would like kiss and, have fun with his car.
Whoa, okay. I was never like this with my Scat Pack. So, please don't misconstrue that in the comments below. I ain't gonna lie, my Scat Pack was pretty thick though. And she had that ass. So, but I was never the type to hump on my car. That's too.
Had more than an emotional relationship with that vehicle, and I would have to assume that the part of his brain that is, well, responsible for separating the line between people and objects was completely blurred, leaving him in a sexual relationship with a vehicle. So yeah, if you ever find yourself feeling extra sentimental about a trinket, a toy, or something of the sort, and either you can't live without it or you get very upset if you lose something that, well, seemed meaningless, you're not a baby and you're not broken. You are more likely just sensitive and have a higher emotional intelligence. Your brain has a strong capacity for memory, and it applies these strong memories and emotional meanings with different things. And most of the time, the meaning of this object has nothing to do with the object itself. For example, let's say your grandfather passed away and he left you a fishing rod. This fishing rod might have so much meaning to you and you could never live without it. Now, from a functional perspective, you may have never fished in your life and you don't.
Low key, now that he does say that, when I crashed my Scat Pack though, I remember the little bee like on the trunk of your car, depending on the version of car you have, either you'll have a Hemi logo. This is Hemi. You'll have a B for Scat Pack, or you'll have a Hellcat logo for your Hellcat. When I crashed my Scat Pack, I kept the B from my my car. It's somewhere in my room, exactly where I don't know at the moment, but it's somewhere in. At least I hope it, because if not, I might cry.
like fishing and you never will fish. That doesn't affect the way you feel about this rod because you've associated memories and emotions to it, making it something you now have an attachment to. And that's okay. And it's also not a form of materialism. It's a form of your brain trying to express how it feels in a way that is tangible to, well, you. So yeah, it's okay to have an emotional connection to your items, and it's also okay not to. If you're the type of person who has no sentimental bone in your body and you could throw away anything in an instant, that is also in a way a superpower because you are not weighed down by any of the things that these extra sensitive people are. And as I want to make clear once again, there is no right or wrong. There are simply different people with different brains. And in the case of sentimentality, it has been shown that people that find themselves closely attached to objects often have a higher emotional intelligence, and that is pretty interesting. Fiction intuition. Have you ever been reading your favorite fictional fairy tale or potentially your favorite romantic novel, only to be told by somebody rudely implying that reading fiction is a waste of time because it's not real?
Hold up, bro. You got a boner going? You got a boner? What you got going on right here, man? Oh yeah, he's reading 50 Shades of Grey. Yeah, no, he's definitely hard. He's definitely all right.
And therefore not educational. If you have, I feel your pain. And fortunately, I've got some good news for you. Recent studies suggest that reading fiction isn't only not a waste of time, it's actually a sign of, you guessed it, high intelligence. And before we get into that, I want to quickly note too that reading in general is probably a good indicator of intelligence. And it's something that most of us probably don't do enough. At least I know I don't. And I guess that's more of a 2026 problem, not enough people are reading, but I do believe that holding a physical book and reading is good for your mind and probably a sign of intelligence. Regardless, the reason why fiction is so strongly associated with a high intelligence is because what fiction demands. Unlike reading non-fiction books, fiction requires the reader to imagine scenes, interpret emotions, follow detailed plot points, and even understand characters' motives and intentions. While reading a detailed fictional story, the brain is consistently trying to predict outcomes, connect past events, and make sense of subtle clues hidden within the dialogue. The habit of reading this and seeking out this sort of material proves that your brain is not only able to handle it, but thrives off of it. And interestingly, it's been shown that reading fiction books strengthens reading comprehension, memory, abstract thinking, and is thought to generally improve your higher cognitive ability. Meaning that not only is reading fiction a habit of somebody with high intelligence, but it is literally a habit that could also increase your intelligence as well, making it something that literally everybody can benefit from, which is really cool. Now, it might sound counterintuitive to suggest that reading books in your room alone can increase your social skills, but some studies have also suggested that that may be the case. And the reason for this is something I've kind of already alluded to. Fiction can increase your emotional intelligence and social skills because as you're reading stories with detailed characters, you are mentally building empathy for their situations, understanding the social dynamics between different characters, and in most cases, developing an ability to understand complex human behaviors by being able to almost see it from a third-person perspective. Something that books and media are able to do in a unique way. I mean, you could probably do this in real life as well too, but you have to basically be watching people have conversations and just be eavesdropping a lot to get the same benefit. And even then, you wouldn't get as much context as, well, a book would give you. But on top of just the demanding nature of most fiction novels, as well as the exercise in emotional intelligence, there is also the mental benefit of simply holding your attention on something that is, well, demanding for a long amount of time. Most fiction readers are not reading their book for 5 or 10 minutes. They're long haul readers, at least the ones that I've met. And these long sessions require patience, imagination, and literal mental endurance. And people who are able to focus for a long amount of time and concentrate on things like plot points, themes, and symbolism, as well as character development, show obvious signs of cognitive strength and stamina, which is kind of amazing. And while some may still make the argument that, well, fiction has no real-world application, the reality is, it really does, just not in a direct way. Sure, a business book can show you how to potentially grow or run a business, but fiction can help expand your mind in a way that will literally allow you to benefit all aspects of your life by having a more finely tuned brain and potentially even better social skills and emotional intelligence. And while your results and strengths may vary, the science is pretty conclusive that reading in general is great, and fiction reading has some pretty unique benefits that I personally was pretty unaware of. And I guess with that, score 1 for the nerds. The messy megamind. Whether it be at school or at work, I'm sure you've come across one of two groups of people in your travels. The first group of people, either at work or school, keeps their desk in immaculate condition. Pencils lined up the right way, at a perfect angle, no shavings on the desk, papers perfectly in order, and the general workspace is as pristine as can be. Now, on the complete opposite side, the other individual has a desk that looks like a nuclear bomb just went off. Papers are seemingly put everywhere, pencils are all over the place. The pencils themselves are more of nubs and shreds than actual pencils, and there truly seems to be no rhyme or reason for anything in this workspace. If I were to ask you, out of these two individuals, which one is likely to have a higher intelligence, what would you say? While
The first thing, I ain't gonna lie, the first thing is me, bro. Personally, I can't really function in a space where it's dirty, bro. If like I'm in a dirty environment, bro, it just fucks with me mentally, and I personally can't concentrate or think right until it's cleaned up. But I might see something the littlest of like if this pencil, for example, if this hole was just tilted at the at like side angle, it might bother me so much that I'm like, yo, bro, I gotta do something about this, and then I'm gonna go fix it, you know?
While the neat desk would likely seem like the obvious choice, I'm sure the now unsurprising answer is the opposite. According to studies, it is a known fact that highly intelligent people typically don't prioritize neatness when it comes to their workplace. Their brains are typically more focused on deeper, more meaningful tasks, and for that reason, cleanliness is usually pushed to the bottom of the totem pole. In a majority of cases, having a slightly messy desk isn't a sign of laziness whatsoever. It's a reflection of having a busy, active mind that places creativity and problem solving above, well, cleanliness and busy work. And the thesis behind the study was that a strict, orderly desk or workspace encourages the person at the desk to think conventionally, within the lines, and make safe, rational decisions, which definitely has a time and place. Although it's also suggested that people with a slightly messy desk are more likely to think out of the box, more unconventionally, and for that reason, more creatively, which also has its own perks and benefits. It's believed that for some people with high IQ, their work is typically done in bursts of passion and deep concentration, meaning that during these literal brain blasts, workspace cleanliness is not even a thought in their mind. And by the time that their task or work session is complete, they typically don't have the mental energy to go ahead and clean their desk. At least, not usually, but everybody's different. And while this may just seem like a cope to some people, there is true validity behind the thought process. It is a historically documented fact that Einstein, for example, had a famously messy desk. And interestingly, he has even gone on record saying, quote, "If a cluttered desk is a sign of a cluttered mind, of what then is an empty desk a sign?" Obviously suggesting that, yes, if your desk is cluttered, your mind is cluttered, you're thinking, you're being active. However, if your desk is empty and clean and prim and proper, maybe your mind is, well, clean, but empty as well. Obviously a bit biased and sarcastic, but I definitely think he has a point with this whole quote. Now, throughout this section, I have been mentioning slightly messy because there is a level between, well, like we've talked about, slightly messy and complete disasters. And there is a major difference between the two. And similar to the whole hoarder example I mentioned earlier, I don't think that you can apply this mindset to a hoarder house and say, wow, that person must be extremely smart because their entire house is a disgusting mess. That's obviously not the case, and is a sign of not high intelligence per se, but potentially of mental illness. Regardless, a lot of the studies done on, well, this messiness specifically relates to desks, although I do think this whole theory could be applied to other environments, such as bedrooms, studios, and other potentially creative places. Interestingly, a big reason why a lot of these messy environments stay messy is because to the person who created them, this is controlled chaos. And while to an outsider, your desk full of pencils and papers everywhere makes no sense, to you, you know exactly where everything is. You know that under that second piece of paper, there is the perfect pencil you like to write with. And you know that under that stained textbook is, well, the best calculator.
See, I don't get, like, me, I'm gonna fuck around and forget. Like, I guess I'm just gonna be dumb then for having a clean setup, you know? But yeah, nigga like me, you cover it up, bro. I forget. Bro, if I told y'all how many times, bro, that say my pillow, right, gets over my bed. Or let's say my pillow, say somehow my pillow gets on top of my phone, right? And I go just literally walk to the bathroom, walk right back. Nigga, I'll forget where my phone was, bro. And that quick, you know what I'm saying?
Known to man. And even though it looks like there's just random scraps of paper everywhere, you know that each one of those pieces of paper actually contains important information relevant to something you're working on. And for that reason, if in your eyes your workplace seems to be, well, at least orderly enough for you to know where everything is, why would you clean it if you could already operate functionally? You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And while I would definitely say there's a time and place to organize things and keep a certain level of cleanliness in your life and in your professional workplace, it's definitely interesting to see the scientific correlations between intelligence and, well, messiness in your workplace. But I'm also kind of curious if this entire study was done by scientists that were getting scolded for having a dirty lab. And instead of cleaning or hiring a janitor, they just decided to do a whole study proving that, well, actually, they're so smart they need a raise because their lab is dirty. But what do I know? The sleepy genius. As a child, naps are a normal and crucial part of life. Although, as an adult, naps take on a different role, a more divisive role. For me personally, I am definitely not one for naps, and if I'm up, I'm up. And the only time I sleep is when I am down for the night. Although, it's not lost on me that there is a large group of the population that simply love their beauty sleep, and they will get as much as they possibly can. Even if they can only get 5 minutes on the couch, 2 minutes on the bus, 10 hours in their bed, 30 seconds at their desk, whatever sleep they can get, they will. And while to me the endless sleep-wake cycle sounds pretty horrible, according to science, the habit of taking a midday nap is not only a sign of unemployment, but also of high intelligence. I guess from a bird's eye view, it kind of makes sense, right? Like, as a baby, naps and sleep in general are massive for both body and brain development. Why not try to maximize those benefits as an adult as well? Jokes aside, obviously there is a lot of reasons for napping as an adult. Unique work schedules, illness, sleep disorders, and of course, high intelligence. And in the context of high intelligence, the reason why napping isn't an uncommon hobby is kind of interesting. People with high IQs are consistently processing information, analyzing details, and forming complex ideas, at least in the context of work. And because of this high mental activity causes a lot of cognitive energy drain, making you feel extremely fatigued, typically in not too long of a time, depending on how demanding the work is and your baseline energy. This combination of demanding work and also drained energy can leave you feeling extremely fatigued, even if you haven't done anything particularly physical, which is why some people opt to nap. A brief nap, even a 5 to 10 minute power nap, allows your brain to reorganize information, reset its focus, and recover from heavy mental load. And with unique techniques and specific intentions, you can make a significant amount of progress in your mental bandwidth with only a short amount of time if you know what you're doing. These intentional naps can also almost be categorized as meditation, which kind of has a similar effect. If you are doing work or participating in a situation that requires a heavy mental load, at some point your brain is going to feel fatigued and you are literally going to be, well, mentally burned out. This is something that we've all felt, and some of us carry this feeling for the rest of the day or even the rest of the week, depending on how severe it is. Although it's been shown that intentionally napping or even meditating in some cases during the day can intentionally reset your brain, essentially clearing its cache, freeing up more space to do more thought-provoking work. And I think it's important to note that your brain is a powerhouse and requires a lot of energy. And on a daily basis, your brain typically burns anywhere from 400 to 500 calories per day. And if you're familiar with exercise and fitness, then you know how much energy and output it requires to burn 500 calories. So just applying that to your brain on a daily basis without moving, it's insane to think about how much work your brain is doing on, well, the inside. Now, just like reading fiction novels, napping can increase your intelligence even if the nap or reading session wasn't triggered by your high intelligence. And that's because that research shows that even a brief nap shows significant improvement in memory retention, logical thinking, decision-making, and creativity. Meaning that this is something that you can actively experiment with and try implementing into your creative process if you ever end up feeling burnt out or simply stuck on an idea or problem. It may sound counterintuitive, but the next time you're really stuck on some work, try not thinking harder about it, but literally going to sleep on it. Not all night, but set an alarm for 15 or 20 minutes and see how you feel afterwards. Now, there's a chance that you might just end up feeling groggy and worse for wear, which isn't necessarily uncommon. Although, if you are one of the individuals that benefits from a short nap, then definitely take advantage of the, well, boost you can get from this nap. Because a good nap is really the closest thing we have to an all-natural, healthy, organic, creativity-boosting, brain-boosting pill. And the best part is, it's free. So yeah, even though there's a plethora of reasons of why adults nap, the reality is that no matter what the situation is, napping does have a net positive effect on your cognitive function, and people with high intelligence are more inclined to nap during the day due to it's free. So yeah, even though there's a plethora of reasons of why adults nap, the reality is that no matter what the situation is, napping does have a net positive effect on your cognitive function, and people with high intelligence are more inclined to nap during the day due to the mental stress they are typically under with demanding work or even default thought processes. So the next time you see your drunk uncle passed out on the couch at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, don't judge him for being lazy. Understand that that man is a genius who knows how to make math. Like, that's impressive. That's
Yeah, I'm sure my mom or Ronnie would love to hear this.
science right there. He's literally the next Einstein. Just look at his desk. It's a mess too. Seeking information. If you watch the Trusted Bro YouTube channel, it's because you like to learn about interesting things. And luckily for you, I make videos about interesting things every single week. And did you know that it's scientifically proven, because I said so right now, that watching a Trusted Bro video is actually a sign of high intelligence? Because if you're seeking out new information, that means that you have a mind that is, well, wanting to learn and grow. And if you ask me for my completely unbiased opinion, that makes you sound like a genius in my books. So, if you like learning and you like the fun format of, well, my videos, feel free to subscribe and become a bro. We're on the road to 2 million subscribers, and believe it or not, nearly 75% of you guys watching this are putting on the right background noise. Maybe it's rain sounds, maybe it's a Trust Me Bro compilation, maybe it's anything. But you know you're not gonna get a good night's sleep without your background noise. Let me paint another picture.
Yo, I'm gonna be honest, bro. Personally, when I go to sleep, I fall asleep to people doing NBA 2K rebuild. I don't know what it is. I've been doing it for so long. It used to be I would used to fall asleep to Mr. Nightmare videos, like his stories or whatever. But now, bro, for the past couple of years, bro, like religiously, I'll go and cut on I'll go cut on a Kenny for real, a KOT 4Q video, Six Rings of Steel. Or Click Productions. I'll cut one of their videos on, bro, and I'll fall asleep, bro. I'll be honest. That's my background. A lot of women I've met, bro, usually it's rain sounds. I've tried rain sounds. Personally, it's just not really like unless if it's actual rain, I can get behind. Like that's actually outside that I can go look at and see. But just the sounds, nah, it doesn't really do much for me.
You know that you have to lock in on a lot of work. Maybe it's schoolwork, maybe it's your career. Regardless, you've got a lot on your plate, but you are just struggling to lock in. That is, until you put on the right binaural beats or brown noise, and all of a sudden, you are simply ready to lock in. I don't know about you, but for me, this is one that I definitely relate to, because having the right background noise can definitely take my focus from a 0 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10 with simply a few clicks on YouTube. With background noise specifically, some highly intelligent people use background noise because it helps their brain function at an optimal level with the right sensory input. For some people, believe it or not, complete silence can actually be distracting, and in some cases, even unnatural feeling. And this is because some intelligent minds are just racing at times, meaning that when they are exposed to silence, they are actually exposed to a plethora of previously unheard thoughts. Now, with some background noise, like some soft music, binaural beats, ambient noise, or whatever it may be, you can effectively regulate your brain's mental activity by providing just enough mental stimulation to keep your brain engaged without overwhelming it. And there's a fine line there, because I've definitely noticed that if I use the wrong content to try to regulate my brain, and which for me is typically anything with more than one person talking, I notice that I actually don't focus more, I get more distracted. But that's just me. Maybe I'm not able to, compute all of that input. Regardless, using background noise to help you focus essentially helps you get into a cognitive flow state, which will help boost your focus, productivity, and problem-solving abilities. So, if you're somebody who consistently finds himself putting on background noise, whether it be in a work environment, a sleep environment, or even just a chill environment to keep your brain stimulated, it's likely because your brain is more powerful than you even know. And the reason why you're putting on this background noise is to subconsciously regulate your brain, because silence for you can sometimes be overwhelming because of how active your brain is, which is definitely interesting. And if this is eye-opening for you, then I want to share a few tips. A lot of what we learned in this video kind of shows that your brain can definitely be powerful, but also in a negative way if you don't learn to control it. Which is why this is not necessarily part of the video, but I just really want to recommend 2 things that have really helped me. One, I mentioned it earlier, look up binaural beats or brown noise on YouTube. There's a bunch of different frequencies you can listen to that actually are proven to help your brain. Brown noise is a different type of frequency that literally kind of turns off mental clutter. It's similar to white noise, but it's brown. I don't know what the difference is, but I just prefer brown noise.
Nick, so noises have skin tones now. That's crazy. But anyways, yeah, with that being said, man, y'all let me know y'all thoughts on this in the comment section below. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Every single sub is greatly appreciated. Until next time, I'll catch y'all boys later, man. Peace.